So on the call today, we're going to run through some community updates. We're also going to discuss a few of the LIP proposals, both the one that's sort of currently under vote, but also some of the others which are in the pipeline. We're also going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the community grants and a few different grants that are in the process and underway. And then we've also got the end of the call, just have a bit of sort of community Q&A if anyone's got any questions or any sort of open topics for discussion. We'll have some time to chat through that. But firstly, so we've got Chris, Remus, and Gleb on the call, who are going to give us a bit of an introduction to the Orchestrator model, a high-level overview, and then we'll go into a bit more detail, and then you can ask any questions they have. So I might hand it over to you, Chris.
Sure, thanks, Nelson. Hi everyone, this is Chris from Chainflow, and we have Gleb Dudka. I have Gleb with me as well. And we received a grant a while back to enhance an Orchestrator, essentially an Orchestrator business model that we began of our own accord once the Streamflow upgrade went live, or just before it, because as a longtime transcoder, I realized I didn't really have a good feel for the economics of the network itself once the Streamflow upgrade would happen. So Gleb and I put together a basic model to help us make sense of the new economics in the transcoder orchestrator world. And we shared that with the Livepeer team, the community. It received some pretty positive feedback. And as a result, we applied for and received a grant to improve upon the model. So what Gleb is going to walk you through now is that improved the model. It's been through 2 iterations of feedback, both from the community and from the Livepeer team. I will say that it is quite complex. This is intended to be a general introduction to the model itself. What we plan to do is in 2 weeks, have a more detailed Q&A and AMA session. So the hope is that if anybody's interested in using this model, they can take a look at it over the next 2 weeks, maybe provide some questions in advance of the call, and then join the call with us, and we can get into the specifics. And then also, what we plan to do between now and then is to write somewhat of an FAQ or a getting started guide on how to use the model itself. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gleb, who will help acclimate everybody to the model itself. Are you there, Gleb?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys, I was on mute. I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the introduction. I'll share my screen. I'll see if I can share it over the Nelson's. Share now. Just give me 1 second. Just allow. Please let me know if you see something.
Yes.
Yeah, looks like it's coming. There it is. We see it.
Okay, great. I also wanted to add a short note on what Chris mentioned, is that we also, within the grant, there's also some scope for continuous improvement of the model. So that's basically one of the reasons also why we wanted to show it, to show the community the basics, to allow people to look into it, and then be able later to contribute and think, okay, what the problems the model might have, what further assumptions you might want to see, what further features you might want to see, so that we can also integrate them a little bit later. So the way this walked through, also because of the limited time and the fact that we'll have a more, let's say, in-depth walkthrough later on, I'll kind of speak or guide you through from the perspective of someone seeing the model for the first time and trying to make sense of it, right? So, and on the first tab, there's a model guide. So it shows what the model is for. So we basically look at from 2 different sides. We want to model the demand side of the network as well as the supply side of the network. It gives a very brief overview of the tabs, what each tab kind of includes, and what are the key, what's the goal of each tab. I'll briefly walk through that as well. Important here is to understand the types of cells and inputs. So you will see in the model there are different basically cells, and there's some cells are like just like normal white cells. Those are like a constant something which is like just an input from, like, this is just a parameter which we observe in the network. And then there are some inputs, some cells which are kind of in this pinkish color. Those are the inputs which we encourage, those are the cells which we, and parameters which we encourage the community to basically be playing around with. And there are two different types of them. So one is just like in black formatting. This is a simple input which you just put once in the model, something like your electricity costs, or a current Livepeer inflation rate, which doesn't necessarily change by much within like the extended periods of time. And then there are inputs which are colored in red. Those are basically the key inputs which we encourage you to play around, because by adjusting them, you are basically seeing the outcomes like propagate through the whole model. And those are the inputs which are basically defining the outcomes in the Orchestrator Dashboard, which I'll show in a bit. There are some drop-down menus, like there are some different assumptions and scenarios. I'll guide you through that as well. There's some kind of programmability. There's a macro included in the model, as well as there are some comments, because also if you hesitate what the parameter is, most likely there's a comment explaining more in depth what kind of the type of the assumption we are making here and where the parameter is coming from. And the fourth is the link where this model can be found. This is the link to the grant page, something Nelson just briefly showed before. Once again, check it out. Feel free to comment what you like, what you don't like. This will be the input for the future iterations and for further improvements of the model. Okay. Then I will just briefly go to the grant scope and changelog. So here you can see the various features we were discussing. And then the features highlighted are the ones which we implemented. And you can see the backlog, the changelog of the various features which we added through the phase 1 and the phase 2. This is in order to, so this is for transparency purposes, so that the community kind of knows what was implemented in each stage. Okay, so those basic things out of the way, I'll show you. So that's the Orchestrator Dashboard. So that's, I would say this is the key tab in the whole model, because this kind of accumulates or aggregates all of the inputs and all of the assumptions made in each other tabs. And that's kind of the dashboard allowing you to kind of see immediately the outcome or like the result of your assumptions you're making and be playing around with those. So it has two different kind of parts to it. One is the Orchestrator Dashboard, and then the model inputs. I will start with the model inputs. As we discussed before, there are different scenarios which you can toggle between. So for example, you can just do transcode, you can just do staking, but you can also do staking and transcoding. You can basically host your setup somewhere by using a cloud provider. You can basically buy and host it yourself. You can also account for your operations costs. So sometimes we think, okay, I'm spending this much time for maintaining, for upkeeping the transcoder, the orchestrator. Do I want to account for that time or not, or do I consider this as investment? So basically you can again toggle between the scenarios, and then you can see basically there's some inputs, some outputs are changing. Then one of the tabs is basically us being able to benchmark Livepeer to other like big guys, like bigger centralized like streaming services like Netflix, YouTube, and Twitch. By selecting those, you can basically see, okay, how does the demand side of the Livepeer network compare to those platforms. So we discussed the red ones are kind of the ones to pay attention to, right? So one of the goals is to, because has been the demand side of Livepeer so far has been like on the on-ramp, so it started very small, and now we can see some growth, but we would obviously expect the growth to continue and improve as there are new partners on board and so forth. And basically, we need some kind of a measure to assume the demand side. So the feature we thought, okay, do we assume the pixels like transcoded in the network? Do we assume like what's the approximation we can use to basically to modeling various scenarios in the network on the demand side? And we thought that the best way to kind of from the simplicity perspective as well, is to assume how many streams simultaneously are being transcoded at the Livepeer network at a certain point in time, right? So here we basically say, okay, there are 35. We can compare it, how it looks compared to centralized alternatives. And I guess I'm going too much in depth here. I'll just summarize this part as saying, okay, here you can find various assumptions. You can put in your pixel price. And then because that's kind of one of the key inputs which you need to be modeling your profit and revenues, right?
Yeah, and so Gleb, I think, so to summarize so far, when somebody picks this up for the first time, go through the model guide. It'll orient you, to the model itself, what the model is hoping to accomplish. It will also describe the individual tabs that Gleb is going to briefly go through as well. Go to the grant scope and change log. That will reinforce what you've seen in the model guide. It will tell you, again, what we set out to do with the model. And then once you go there, orient yourself with the Orchestrator Dashboard. And as Gleb was going through, the Orchestrator Dashboard contains the key inputs and outputs of the model. And you'll see that there are some inputs highlighted in pink in the remaining tabs, but most of those inputs are here in the Orchestrator Dashboard. So I would start with those 3 tabs to begin. And now, in the next few minutes, Gleb will go through the remaining 6 tabs at a very high level, giving an idea of what each tab's purpose is. And then from there, I think we'll open it for any initial questions and then maybe leave the rest of the questions for the detailed Q&A. So back to you, Gleb.
So basically, to sum it up, just look in this model. These inputs, try to play around with them, see how they impact the outcome here in the Orchestrator Dashboard. One of the key things we like, the takeaways here, we want to first of all assume the demand side. We want to see our price, as well as see how our pixel price change impacts our revenues and profits. So here you can set up deviations and then see that. And here you'll be able to see, okay, am I charging competitive prices? Do I need to scale my infrastructure? What are the revenues I'm generating from transcoding? What are the revenues I'm generating from staking, from inflation? And then you can see some kind of your operating margin and your net profit and so on and so forth. Shortly going over the tabs. So we have the cost tab and 2 revenue tabs, right? We have one cost, which is the cost for the infrastructure. And we have 2 types of revenue, one from the inflation, one from actual performing the work from transcoding. In the cost tab, we discussed here some infrastructure costs, some assumptions we are making about those, about bandwidth, about virtual hosting, and about the efforts, right? How much does it take us to basically upkeep the orchestrator? The inflation is rather simple. It's basically what's my inflation on my stake, on my own personal stake or on a delegated stake. The revenue from transcoding, we started by calculating basically the pixels in the video, the bandwidth requirements for this. That's the amount of pixels we are transcoding with this video, the amount of pixels we can transcode based on our infrastructure. And the way we look at it is we decide, okay, how do we orient ourselves? What's the price? Like, it's like 50,000, a million, 2 million. How do we get a feel of that? So we look at the price floor, for instance. This is our cost per pixel, which is break even. Like, this is our break even cost per pixel, which we kind of should not really go, at least in the mid to long term, below. And then there's a price ceiling, which is a pixel price of some centralized alternatives, right? And then we kind of, this is a band within which we are kind of, it makes sense for us to basically find ourselves. And that's the price, the pixel price we assumed in the dashboard, right? So from this, we calculate our transcoding revenues based on number of the total network, demand side, on our share of the network, how much videos we are transcoding from that. And then basically we end up with something like how much revenue are we planning to get based on that. Total profit, very simple, basically taking those 3 together, calculating profit, tax rate, for instance. I briefly mentioned trying to benchmark the Livepeer network demand side compared to the centralized players. So here we kind of try to make sense of, okay, how many videos, many pixels are the centralized players consuming, So then we can basically benchmark the Livepeer network demand side assumption towards those and say, oh, what would happen if Livepeer would basically stream 0.01% of YouTube, for instance, something like this, and we can see how that would impact our our revenues and our traffic we have to transcode, and as well as do we need to scale our infrastructure to do so. And then the most tricky part is the demand modeling. A short disclaimer on here, that's the last step in this model. We are operating, as you, I guess, well know, with a very limited data set of transcoding. So it's very hard for us to basically make a very reliable, it's hard to make a reliable demand function. Yes, we're taking a step back. The goal of this is to try to model the demand function for transcoding in the Livepeer network based on historical data. This should be an input to see, okay, does it make sense for us to increase or decrease the price, right? But because we are operating under the very limited data set, it has to be taken with a grain of salt as well. But the mechanism of calculating of the demand function is within the model. So once we have more data set, we just plug in the data set here, and then we get to the more, let's say, statistically reliable demand function. All of these are then, as we said, just to summarize, all of these are then making their way into this Orchestrator dashboard in one form or the other. So I guess from this, I would finish the walkthrough. There was the comment which also, based on the current kind of topic of the day, the gas prices, that would also fall into the cost, operating cost tab. We didn't really account for that yet, but for having seen how the fees developed and how big of a concern is getting, I would definitely see one of the next features which we include is being able to basically set different gas prices and see how much does it basically eat into our revenues. And with this, I guess I'll finish and open to questions.
This is Doug, Gleb. That was really great. Thanks for the walkthrough, and thanks for building it, Gleb and Chris. One comment that jumped out to me was on the demand modeling relative to Netflix, Twitch, and YouTube. It looks like you're maybe looking at how much bandwidth they use as a proxy for number of streams. I think that what would be a better way of looking at it would be not in terms of bandwidth, because that counts how many viewers are viewing it, whereas each stream only needs to be transcoded once. Instead, it would be interesting to look at how many pieces of content are being produced through those platforms. So in Twitch, it's how many live streams are currently flowing through the platform. In YouTube, it's how many uploads or how many live streams, etc. So just a quick input. Happy to take that offline, but that was the one thing that jumped out at me. But everything else looked great and really, really useful. If you can make these reasonable assumptions about how many streams are truly flowing through the network, which you'll be able to do in the coming weeks and months, it looks like a great model.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that into account, Doug. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Thanks for the feedback. Does anyone else have any other initial questions?
Yeah, just a quick one from me, but it's a fairly general question. Was there anything when you guys were working through the model that surprised you? Any inputs that you didn't expect would have as big an impact as it does?
I think one of the surprises was sometimes to see the centralized alternatives cost-wise not being so far off. So basically, we also try to calculate the kind of LPT value add, so the savings. So if we were to if the average, let's say, if the average pixel price in the network would be X, how much are we actually saving compared to the centralized alternatives? And I mean, at the current, because if we take 45,000 GUI, which is I think currently on the higher end of the pricing, I think many orchestrators charge way lower prices at this point. But basically, that wouldn't be so far off from the centralized alternative. That what surprised me. But I guess by bringing the cost down, we can decrease basically this band, because we are speaking about this cost, the price ceiling and a price floor. So I guess by like economies of scale and improving, like making it more efficient, we can decrease the price floor, meaning that we can basically charge lower prices and further kind of increase the gap between, kind of provide more efficiency gains as opposed to like centralized alternatives. I guess that's what I would highlight.
Yeah, and from my side, I don't know that it was a surprise. It was just more of a confirmation that, Gleb, where's the input? Oh yeah, so if you look at account for operations, effort, and time, this is something I asked Gleb to split out. So basically, you know, if we're considering covering our hardware costs, you know, with income that's being generated today, you know, that's feasible. But the second you add in even light to moderate operational cost coverage, you'll see that, you know, you go into the red pretty fast. So it just confirmed for me that I'm glad I can cover my hardware costs at the moment as they are, but at the same time, you know, I recognize that the operational effort and time I put into this is more or less my investment in the future of the network. So that's one of the reasons that toggle is there. So if you want to see how, you know, you're covering your hardware costs or not, you would switch that to off. If you wanted to, you know, see whether or not you're covering the actual time and effort you're putting into maintaining your infrastructure, you would put that to yes. And I think you'll see a pretty dramatic difference between whether this is profitable or not just yet. But yeah, no other questions.
I just have one question, which is...
Sure, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, which is like, how do I get hold of this? Is this published somewhere?
Yes, it's published on the grant page. Here's also the link. It has been published on Twitter, in Discord, and I guess we are glad to share it once again in Discord after this call.
Yeah, and I'm trying to keep all the updates in that forum post as well, so everything is consolidated in that one forum post there. So Chris, you can find the link to the model in that forum post.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, so I guess with that, Nelson, we'll send it back to you for now. Yeah.
Awesome,
Good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
One small comment from me, not really about the model itself, but more a question for, I guess, Adam. Is there any chance we could add this model to the resources page of the Livepeer.org page?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could submit a PR and add it, or anyone can really. But yeah, good idea. We should definitely feature it.
All right, Nelson, you with us? You want to move on to the next topic?
Screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. And then the other big news that we had, which some of you may have seen, was the new Livepeer.org, which has just gone live. So yeah, basically it's a new community dedicated site, which has been completely split away from Livepeer.com. It was a collaboration with Basement Studios. As you can see, it's sort of this resource for developers, token holders, video miners. And it's also got a sort of archive with a lot of the sort of central resources for the community. So this would be that sort of one central source. Yeah, Adam, did you have anything you want to add on the sort of thinking behind Livepeer.org?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the goal, as it's stated on the about page of the site, is really the goal of the site is just to be like the best portal to Livepeer for its users and also its participants. So yeah, whether you fall under the camp of a developer or a token holder, a video miner, you know, it was important you had like a really clear path to get to where you needed to go as soon as you land on the site. And also just to make it look really good. So yeah, and I'd also just like to state, like, this is the beginning of a relaunch. So the goal is to grow the site with the project. It's open source, so anyone can submit a PR with copy updates or whatnot. So yep, this is just the beginning.
To elaborate on the open source piece, a lot of people hear that and they think, oh, I'm not going to develop the site or write code to change anything about it. I think what's more interesting about it being open source is actually this screen we're looking at right now is a resources page that links to all the projects, such as the business model that we just looked at, could be a resource that's linked to from here. Anyone can add a resource that gets linked from this page. And similarly, there's a great FAQ with answers to common questions for node operators, token holders, general questions about the project. Anyone can add a question and answer to that page. And so, that's the way to think about contributing in the easiest way possible, or making the site better for the community. And I encourage everyone to submit updates and add resources.
This is maybe a question for Adam. Like, is there ways of pulling 3-box data into this? Because this seems like it's like one central community resource. Looks like a great idea. I guess I know there are some projects that are filling out their Explorer profiles. I'm just wondering if that kind of content can be pulled in as well.
Yeah, it could be. I think. Yeah. If you have any ideas in terms of like how you'd like to showcase everyone maybe that's created a 3-box profile within Livepeer, we could maybe create a section on the token holder page or something. But yeah, it's certainly possible if you have any ideas.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that would be really helpful if you could link, community members could link their 3-box to things like the forum, things like that GitHub, sort of tie some of this together. I think the other thing that's worth mentioning as well is on the site, you can also see both the community calls all at the bottom of the site, and also all the LIP calls which are happening, which is, very cool.
Yeah, and I think, moving forward, some things that we could, I'm looking forward to adding is just internationalization. So different language translations, CMS support, just so it's easier for contributors who don't necessarily code to update, copy, or add content. But if you have any ideas, feel free to create an issue for it in the repo.
Awesome. And then moving on to Livepeer.com site. So this actually launched a little bit earlier, but so basically the two sites have been completely split. The Livepeer.com site is Livepeer Inc., sort of showcasing the team and what they're building, and then also sort of outlining some of the services Livepeer.com offers, the advantages of what Livepeer is building, and then also some of the resources to help people get started. And I know that Livepeer is offering a sort of range of different services, including Livepeer API, and then also some other services such as ingest and things like that. All the different sort of tools that videos and broadcasters need. So yeah, Doug, would you want to expand a little bit on some of the sort of additional services that Livepeer Inc. Offers from the website?
Sure. So basically, the website tries to make it as easy as possible to sign up for an API key and get started building your streaming application. It takes you through a tutorial of how to just test a stream manually via kind of creating it yourself in a point-and-click manner, but it pretty quickly drops you into API documentation for how you would actually program against this API and build your streaming application, something that looks like a Twitch or YouTube Live, using the APIs available. And it's pretty straightforward. It uses the common protocols the common protocol for video ingest, RTMP. You can specify the transcoding parameters that you need depending on your audience and your input types. And then it gives you playback URLs for you to embed the streams in your mobile or your web application. Anyone can go through and try it out. It's open. Livepeer.com will get some updates soon to package it together into a little bit more of a commercial product, but the early users are building against this and testing against it, and it's good. We've seen people registering and begin to test every day. So really excited about it. Hopefully have more updates on the commercial side in terms of usage to share pretty soon.
Okay, brilliant. And one other point, I don't think we got Philip on the call, but there was also a sort of thread that he put out talking about, I think it was the future use of neural networks within Livepeer. If Eric or Doug, would you want to sort of add any context on what you guys are working on there and sort of what's in the works on that front?
Sure. So this is really exciting for the future of both the Livepeer public network and for people building user-generated content apps to use Livepeer for streaming, because what's really cool is that all the video transcoding that's being done on these GPUs is using the video encoding chips. And because the video is already there and because these GPUs have kind of general purpose compute chips, we can also do what we'll call smart video tasks while the transcoding is happening. And what are these smart video tasks? It's using AI in order to do things like classify what type of scene is occurring in the video, which can be really important for things like content moderation. So for example, the output of the video that comes out of Livepeer can be automatically flagged if it's adult content or violent content or contains minors. These are things that are really useful to platforms like Twitch and YouTube Live that require this sort of content moderation. And it's something that's very complicated and computationally intensive to do, but the Livepeer network can give you the superpower while the video is also being transcoded at a marginally increased cost, whereas typically it's very expensive service to access that's performed separately. Other types of tasks include things like object detection. So if there's a digital e-commerce experience like a fashion show, the particular shirt that's being shown could be automatically detected, and you could make it clickable and it could link directly to a product page, for example. Another thing is using speech to text kind of subtitle generation automatically along with the video. So where's this at right now? There's proofs of concept built, working with demos of this sort of capability being exposed alongside of the transcoding. We're excited to map this onto the public network so the orchestrators with GPUs could offer and price these services in addition to the transcoding. And on the commercial side, we're looking for pilot design partners who have a specific use case in mind that want to kind of take the early proofs of concept or demos that we have, work with us in order to make sure we really nail it for their use case. And then the result will be, us learning how to kind of productize it in order to actually bring on a lot more demand for repeatable use cases. So really excited about what it can enable for user-generated content streaming apps, and also excited that it expands more capabilities to the public network beyond just transcoding, and that kind of expands the market and fees that could flow into the public network in the future as well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, and moving on, does anyone have any questions on that point? All right, and so next we're going to run through some of the LIP proposals which are happening. So the key one which should be on everyone's mind is the LIP 35, which we currently have voting underway. And I believe just today we did actually pass the quorum, so the vote is in effect. So yeah, I'd say that the high gas prices have probably perhaps been impacting people's ability to vote, but there is still 4 days remaining, so everyone does still have time to vote. And to just reiterate, so LIP 35 has been largely led by Victor. He so made the official proposal, and it's in relation to making inflation changes to the protocol. And it's actually a combination of LIP 34 and 40. And yeah, so basically the key change which is being proposed is to change the inflation change parameter to 0.5 from the current 3, which is a fairly significant reduction in the speed of inflation dropping. And yeah, the key sort of takeaway is that it extends the time in which inflation will reach 0 from the end of 2020 out to mid-2022 to mid-2023, depending on protocol adoption. So yeah, so that one's underway.
Interesting to see the voting play out so far. There's been no votes, but surely some people have questions or different opinions about the economics. Does anyone on the call have any questions they wanted to bring up before making up their mind or voting on this issue? All right, we have a pretty aligned group on the call then. But yeah, glad that quorum was reached, and we'll see how the vote plays out in the coming days.
Cool. So yeah, that's the one proposal that we have, which is currently at a vote. And then there's also some other proposals which are in the pipeline, and a lot of those are relating to some of the gas issues, which we were discussing earlier in the call. So as I'm sure a lot of you have sort of realized, gas prices have been at around 200 to 300 over the past 24 hours, which has been impacting the entire Ethereum community, but also specifically Livepeer due to some of the dynamics of the protocol, which weren't designed with that in mind. So the first proposal is LIP 36, which is a cumulative earnings claiming sort of proposal. I believe this was proposed by Yondon. And basically, it proposes a more efficient earnings claiming algorithm, which would reduce gas costs and improve the user experience of claiming earnings. So it will require active transcoders to store cumulative rewards, and then also store a cumulative reward factor and cumulative fee for each round. So at a high level, basically, when a delegator claims earnings from round A through to round B, the cumulative rewards are added to its stake and fees as delegator, with the key sort of goal of reducing gas fees. And then the other, the other LIP which has been put forward was put forward by Doug, which is LIP 52, which is our pending stake snapshot. And again, it's a different approach to reducing the gas problems, but it's tackling the same issue. Effectively, this proposal proposes snapshotting the pending stake values for each delegator account at a specific block height and round, and can improve the snapshot on chain. Basically, updates the claim earnings transaction, reference the snapshot, and eliminate the need to claim earnings from each round. So the key goal, again, dramatically reducing lower gas costs for the claiming of earnings, which orchestrators need to do. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about either of these proposals at this stage? I would mention these are both in progress. They're not at a vote. They're not finalized.
I'll just add a few things here. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a different approach, but the two LIPs are complementary, right? So LIP 36 tries to address having a more optimal algorithm for claiming earnings that is like that is constant in time complexity. But that would only work for rounds after the upgrade gets deployed to the protocol, right? We would still have to loop through every round to claim earnings for a delegator. for all rounds prior to the LIP36 upgrade. So that's actually what LIP52, I think the number is, tries to address. It tries to provide a way to also have this constant time complexity for claiming earnings for rounds prior to the LIP36 upgrade. So in that sense, they're actually complementary.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that context. And yeah, I guess just another question, and maybe this just broadly to the Livepeer team. Yeah, have any other sort of ideas been floated about, alternative ways that these gas costs could be mitigated or perhaps protections put in place for extreme congestion conditions like we're seeing at the moment?
I think these are the main ideas that have been floated that are like short-term, actionable without major, architectural changes to like the blockchain that the protocol is run on. But I think there are like layer 2 scaling solutions and using techniques like zero knowledge rollups and whatnot that are, being researched and considered for, further enhancements to the protocol that would make the gas price issues irrelevant. One other comment on this is, a lot of people on this call are focused on the supply side, so they're token holders or orchestrators, and they're focused on their costs related to doing things like operating the protocol, calling reward, and claiming earnings. These are real concerns that we want to address through these sorts of improvement proposals and discussions. But I also think it's important to notice that on the demand side, for users of the network that want to use Livepeer for video transcoding, the probabilistic micropayments solution that we built for exactly this reason, to make the network usable without, not at high cost or at a continuously low cost, no matter where gas prices go, is theoretically it's working well. It's meeting that goal. I think we need to gather and share some statistics, and there may be some trade-offs in terms of the size of deposit that a node needs to make in order to continue to get those low costs. But theoretically, regardless of where the gas costs go, the network is still usable at close to the orchestrator's quoted price, regardless of where these gas prices go. And that's really powerful. And that's that was the intended mechanism with the stream flow update.
Okay, awesome. And did anyone have any other questions or comments? Cool. All right. And then so next, moving on to discuss some of the different things we have in the pipeline for grants. So first, I did just want to recap. So obviously the price model, which Chris and Gleb walked us through, was a community grant. It's in process. Community Grants Committee also did recently fund the Livepeer pricing tool, which was led by the Fiddle Labs guys. And yeah, basically the Livepeer pricing tool provides an overview of the price and fees being charged for the transcoding process in the network, giving you key metrics such as price per unit, pixels per unit, and the number of pixels encoded. Provides a GraphQL API for exposing various analytics related to fees and pricing, and also provides a web interface showcasing some of the pricing, as well as some sort of charts to help visualize it. So yeah, here's a screenshot of that one. And there's also a link here, which I can share this after. People wanted to check that out. And then also, yeah, as part of the grants committee, we've also been exploring doing a sort of research grant, someone in the community that would be interested in digging into Rosetta. So for those that aren't familiar, Rosetta is a sort of open framework, which has sort of been led by Coinbase, which is for applications, sort of trying to encourage interoperability among sort of blockchain applications, and creating like an industry standard for this type of interoperability and sort of compatibility, I suppose, and sort of driving adoption standards. So yeah, it's received a lot of traction to date, but we were interested in doing a research grant if someone would like to sort of dig into the feasibility and do like a feasibility report outlining what would be required. We'd be interested in then sort of exploring perhaps the community member doing that grant, or the Livepeer team working on that grant or on that integration. Yeah. Cool. And then, so yeah, the last 10 minutes was reserved for community Q&A. So did anyone have any questions? Could be sort of general, or could be on Livepeer community more specifically.
I just have one question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Cool, thank you. Just about this, like this vote around the inflation change parameter. It's like the first like real meaningful change to the protocol vote. Like I'm aware that in the first phase of the whole governance thing, the changes don't get enacted automatically as soon as the vote passes. So I'm just wondering, like, when the vote passes and everything is like yes or no, if it's yes, that then is going to require someone to do some manual change. And I'm just wanting to make sure that we're ready for it. Are we ready for it?
Great question. The answer is yes. This was something we focused on a recent LIP call, which is open to anyone, but it's largely like the core champion of an issue or the core developers working on it. And Yanin, if you're on, you could give more details, but in short, the implementation's been tested and reviewed, and the parameter change is an easy update, so it should be a pretty quick execution if the vote passes.
So pretty quick is like a few minutes after the vote passes? Or hours,
I would
or
say
days, or
within,
weeks?
Yeah, good question. There's no standard for this yet, but I think it's within, probably within a round or two.
Cool.
All the more reason to move quickly towards the automated execution of passing votes, where there doesn't have to be that ambiguity, and everyone would have the expectation that at the block that the poll ends, the code that's already been deployed would be executed if it passes.
Hooray!
So this might be a good point to actually cover LIP 25 a little bit, which is like a contract that allows one to stage updates like this and then execute them after a certain delay. And that delay would currently be longer than the actual unbonding period. But this LIP would come after the inflation change proposal, so it's not in effect right now. But going forward, that window of time would like be the delay from when a vote passes to when it actually gets executed, roughly.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome. And yeah, did anyone have any other questions? No? Okay, cool. Well, look, I think we can wrap it up there, guys. So yeah, thanks for joining. And yeah, we'll follow up over Discord if anyone has any follow-up questions. And the guys will also link the Orchestrator model for everyone to check out.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks Nelson for hosting, and thanks Gleb and Chris for presenting. See y'all later.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.